There's a reason far deeper than you might imagine for why you are here right now. And no, this is not just a coincidence. This message has found you because something within you is already ready to see what most still cannot. You may think you chose this video, but in truth it was your vibration, your silent frequency, that guided you to this very moment. Perhaps you felt it before, a strange, almost indescribable sensation that there's something beyond what your eyes can perceive. A growing suspicion that the world doesn't work the way you were taught, that there's an invisible mechanism, a hidden code, an intelligence that responds, not to what you say, not to what you desire, but to what you observe. And here's an unsettling truth. Your reality right now is a perfect reflection of how you've been observing everything, including yourself. And if that feels uncomfortable, understand this, that discomfort isn't a mistake. It's a sign, a calling, a vibrational confirmation that you're crossing an invisible threshold, one that only those truly ready are able to reach. The very fact that you are here means your field has already begun to shift. You're starting to break free from the autopilot, from reactivity, from illusion, and beginning to see what's always been here, but only reveals itself to the eyes of those willing to truly observe. And if you choose to stay present, aware, and simply allow everything that once seemed solid, fixed, unchangeable, will begin to dissolve. Because from this moment on, you will no longer be someone who merely lives in the world. You will become the conscious observer who shapes the world itself. If you are ready, keep going, because what comes next changes everything. Reality as a reflection. What you see reveals where you are internally. There's something few dare to question, and once truly understood, it changes absolutely everything. The reality you perceive is not an absolute truth. It never was. What you call reality is, in fact, a perfect, precise, and undeniable reflection of the frequency you hold within. If you pay close attention, you'll notice that everything around you, without exception, is constantly revealing who you are, being energetically. And this isn't some spiritual metaphor. It's a precise mechanism, almost mathematical, that governs absolutely everything. The universe, the field, God, the source. It doesn't matter what name you give it. It all operates through a vibrational intelligence that mirrors, without judgment, exactly what you quietly carry within. The way you perceive the world is not just a minor detail. It is the very center of your creation. If you perceive scarcity, chaos, resistance, it doesn't mean the world is that way. It means your lens, your frequency, your internal vibration is filtering precisely that version of reality. And here lies the key. The world is not some solid, fixed entity happening outside of you. The world is a holographic extension of your own consciousness. It reflects not what you consciously want, but what you are silently vibrating, often without even realizing it. While most people go through life believing that facts are just facts, that events are random, that life is a sequence of coincidences, you begin to see what almost no one else does, that everything, absolutely everything, obeys an energetic principle. And that principle is simple, but not easy to accept. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. It's unsettling, isn't it? Because it removes you from the role of victim, of chance, of the system, of circumstances, and places you directly at the center as the creator of your own experience. It forces you to look inward, deeply, and ask yourself, what reflection am I sustaining? Maybe now you're beginning to notice patterns that keep repeating in your life, situations that seem to happen over and over, cycles that persist no matter how hard you fight against them. And do you know why? Because the quantum field, reality itself, doesn't respond to your conscious will. It responds to your vibrational signature. If internally you hold fear, anxiety, doubt, resistance, The reflection cannot be anything different. But if, instead, you begin to sustain presence, clarity, coherence, peace, then the world starts to quietly reorganize itself, as if it's receiving a new code, a new instruction. Imagine that reality is like a mirror, but not an ordinary mirror. It's a quantum mirror, sensitive, responsive, intelligent. It doesn't reflect your face, your appearance. It reflects your internal state, your deepest beliefs, your recurring thoughts, your predominant vibration. And here's something even more powerful. This mirror does not judge. It doesn't decide whether you deserve or not. It doesn't choose whether to give or withhold. It simply reflects precisely, mathematically, what you send into it. And this is where everything starts to make sense. You are not here by accident. If this message has reached you, it's because on some level, you've already started to notice that what you see says far more about where you are internally than about the world itself. While most people stay trapped trying to fix the external, you begin to realize that the real work was always internal. That what you observe is merely a vibrational snapshot of what's being emitted, consciously or unconsciously, from your field. And the more you observe this, the more you recognize how this quantum mirror operates, the more you begin to reclaim a power that, for so long, seemed out of reach. The simple act of noticing already starts to change everything. Because when you notice, you are no longer on autopilot. You are no longer being dragged by the current of unconscious reflections. You take your position, you become aware. And being conscious is the very first step toward changing everything. What you see is not the world, it's you. It's your frequency, reflected back as circumstances, people, situations, and experiences. And if that feels uncomfortable, good. Because discomfort is not punishment. It's the universe inviting you to awaken, to finally step into the place that has always been yours, that of a conscious co-creator of your own reality. And that is exactly what we're about to dive deeper into. Because if the reflection is inevitable, then the question is no longer, why is this happening to me? But rather, what within me is sustaining this reflection? Get ready, because once you understand this, the game changes, and there's no turning back. Why most people don't see it, the world responds to what's unconsciously perceived. Now that you're beginning to understand that reality works like a vibrational mirror, maybe one question is echoing within you. If this is so real, so obvious, so present, why don't most people see it? Why do so many keep walking the same streets, living the same cycles, experiencing the same pain, without ever suspecting that they themselves are unconsciously sustaining the very reflection they call life? The answer, though unsettling, is deeply liberating. Most people don't see it because they're blinded by what has become familiar, addicted to their own vibrational pattern, trapped in a silent loop, where the mind, conditioned by the past, keeps observing the world through the lenses of survival, fear, scarcity, and separation. From a very young age, we were taught to see reality as something fixed, solid, unchangeable. We were trained to believe we are victims of circumstance, prisoners of chance, the system, luck, or fate. Very few were ever taught how consciousness truly operates, how perception creates, shapes, and organizes what we call reality. And while the mind is busy reacting, judging, criticizing, fearing, struggling to survive, it fails to notice that it's feeding exactly what it wants to avoid the most. It observes chaos, and unknowingly, by observing, it strengthens it. It perceives lack, and by focusing on scarcity, it unknowingly perpetuates it. It notices limitations, and the very act of observing those limitations is what keeps those invisible walls firmly in place. It's a cruel paradox. Human beings believe they are merely describing reality, when in fact, they are constantly co-creating it. The unconscious mind doesn't realize that the constant focus on the problem, on fear, on resistance, isn't harmless. It's a vibrational command, one that the quantum field, in its precise and neutral nature, interprets as information. And the field always responds, not to what you want, but to what you are energetically observing, sustaining, and vibrating. And here lies the greatest secret that most never see. The field doesn't distinguish between conscious and unconscious observation. It doesn't care whether you're observing something because you love it or because you hate it, whether you desire it or fear it. To the field, it's all the same. Energy, information, vibration. The very act of observing, whether with love, fear, or resistance, is always an energetic input, a feeding of that pattern. That's why so many live in a reality that, on the surface, feels unsolvable. They try to change the outside, force results, alter circumstances, but they keep observing, internally, unconsciously, the same beliefs, the same fears, the same conditioning. And the mirror, like a faithful servant, simply keeps reflecting it back. And this, right here, is where you begin to step away from the unconscious masses. Because the very fact that you are hearing this now means you've already begun to shift to a new inner place. There's no pretending you don't know anymore. There's no turning back. You now realize that your reality is not chasing you. It's mirroring you. But yes, it's uncomfortable. I know. Because accepting this requires courage. The courage to look within, deeply and understand that it's no longer about blaming the world or others or circumstances, but about asking yourself with complete honesty, what within me is still feeding this version of reality? And here lies one of the greatest challenges of this process. The unconscious is not something you directly see. It's what you've been so used to carrying that you no longer even realize it's there. Like the fish, unaware of the water it swims in, so immersed in the vibrational field it sustains that it believes it's simply life, reality, the world. But when for just a brief moment, you pause, observe, become still, something starts to break. And in that exact moment, maybe you begin to realize that certain patterns were never truly real. They were merely vibrational echoes of a state of consciousness you've been unconsciously sustaining for far too long. And here's the most curious part. It was never a mistake. It was always an invitation, a silent invitation from the universe, from life, from the field, calling you again and again to look within, to remember who you truly are. And who you truly are was never a victim. You've always been the observer. You've always been the co-creator. The problem is that, unknowingly, most people have been observing unconsciously, focusing on fear, on lack, on the problem, on the pain, and the field, ever faithful, responds, reflects, manifests. But now that you know, now that you're beginning to understand how this quantum mirror works, a new possibility emerges. The possibility of no longer being a prisoner of the reflection, but finally, becoming the master of your own observation. Because if unconscious observation is what keeps the world as it is, then conscious observation has the power to transform it completely. The breakthrough moment, when consciousness realizes it's co-creating everything. There is a moment, often silent, invisible to the eyes of the world, that marks an irreversible split in any human life. A breakthrough moment, a point of no return. A moment when, with absolute clarity, consciousness finally realizes that it was never just living reality, but has always been co-creating everything. This moment isn't an external explosion. It doesn't come with fireworks or loud revelations. Most of the time, it arrives as an inner whisper, a silence so deep, it becomes almost deafening. And within that silence emerges a realization powerful enough to shatter every old structure. My God, it was me. It was me all along. It was me unknowingly sustaining the same reflections. It was me observing the world through eyes addicted to fear, scarcity, resistance. And the world faithfully was only reflecting back what I was holding in my field. It was me, trapped in the stories of the past, who kept feeding the same movie, the same frequency, the same results, day after day. And when this realization strikes, there's no way to unsee it. There's no going back to who you were before, because from that moment on, you understand with razor-sharp clarity that absolutely everything in your life, without exception, is resonating with the quality of your presence, your vibration, your observation. You may even realize that many of your deepest conflicts, your pains, your challenges, were never happening to you, but through you. Not because you deserved to suffer, not because life wanted to punish you, but because the universe, in its perfect intelligence, can only do one thing: reflect. It does not create from nothing. It simply translates into matter, into circumstances, into experiences, the vibration you are dominantly sustaining. And this moment, this breakthrough, is deeply uncomfortable, yet extraordinarily liberating. Because on one hand, it shatters every illusion. It destroys the mental castles that kept you prisoner to the idea that life was just a string of coincidences, luck, misfortune, or destiny. But on the other hand, it hands you, without filters, without compromise, without half-truths, the absolute power of vibrational self-responsibility. And this is where something truly profound happens. You realize it's no longer enough to simply want things to change. It's no longer enough to repeat mantras, to make affirmations, to try to manipulate the external world. Because the real point of creation was never out there. It has always been in your observation, in your presence, in the way you hold your energy when no one is watching. This is the moment you realize that thinking positively isn't enough if internally you're still observing life through the lenses of doubt, anxiety, or resistance. Because the quantum field does not respond to isolated thoughts. It responds to the vibration within them. It responds to your state of being, to what you are as you observe. And right here, an inevitable question arises. If everything is a reflection of my vibration, then who do I need to become in order to live the reality I desire? And this question is not theoretical. It's not intellectual. It's vibrational. Because life does not give you what you want. It gives you what you become as you observe. And the moment this realization lands, the old begins to crumble. You finally understand you are not here to fight against reality, not here to resist what you see. You are here to consciously choose the field you wish to sustain. You realize the world doesn't change when you fight with the reflection. The world changes when you change the one standing in front of the mirror. And almost like magic, but entirely logical from an energetic perspective, what once seemed immovable begins to dissolve. Because the field, sensitive, intelligent, responsive, has no choice. It is bound by law, by vibrational coherence, to reorganize the reflection according to the new observer that you become. This is the real awakening. It's not mystical, not esoteric, not theoretical. It's simple, it's profound, it's radical. It's consciousness looking at itself and finally realizing, I am the cause. The world is just the effect. And if, on some level, this truth has touched you, if this breakthrough moment echoed within you, like a whisper that changes everything, then let me know. Let me feel that we are vibrationally aligned. Leave a like on this video so I know this frequency has reached you. After all, realizing that you are the one sustaining the reflection is one of the greatest keys to freedom anyone can ever access. Silent observation as a vibrational technology. When consciousness passes through this breakthrough and finally understands that reality is a reflection of its own vibration, a new question emerges. An inevitable, almost urgent question: if that's true, then how do I change the reflection? And this is where many people get lost. Because out of conditioning, they try to create that change using the old tools of the mind: effort, control, trying to manipulate the external, mental strategies, empty affirmations, automatic repetitions, anxious requests to the universe. But all of this is just a manifestation of the old paradigm, the one that believed external doing was the way to change reality. But the truth is something entirely different. And once you understand it, everything shifts. The field doesn't respond to words. It doesn't respond to rootless desires. It doesn't respond to anxiety disguised as positivity. The field responds to your state of being, to what you are vibrationally sustaining as you observe. And it's here that you begin to understand something profound. There exists an invisible technology, incredibly powerful, sophisticated, but so subtle, almost no one notices. A technology not made of devices, not made of machines, not made of anything external, but made of presence, of coherence, of silence. Silent observation is without a doubt one of the most powerful vibrational technologies a human being can access. Because when you observe in silence, without resistance, without judgment, without trying to force reality to unfold, you instantly shift the frequency of your field. And silence doesn't mean the absence of sound. It means the absence of internal noise, the absence of conflict. It's when the mind stops fighting with what it sees, stops labeling, judging, wishing things were different. It's when you simply observe with presence, with neutrality, with a surrender so deep that there is no longer separation between you and the field. You become the field. You merge with it. And in that state, something extraordinary begins to happen. The field feels it. It senses your new vibrational signature, and precisely, it begins to reorganize patterns, frequencies, circumstances, synchronicities, encounters, flows. Everything starts to realign, not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped sustaining the frequency of the problem. Here's a truth most people don't want to face. As long as you observe a problem with resistance, you are feeding it. As long as you observe lack, you strengthen it. As long as you observe with anxiety, you are informing the field, I don't have, I am not, I cannot see. But when you simply observe, without tension, without trying to get rid of it, without wishing it were different, you are no longer vibrating at the frequency of lack. You are sustaining presence. And presence is abundance in its purest form. Picture, for a moment, a crystal clear lake. If you enter that lake thrashing, moving your arms and legs, the water becomes murky, chaotic, disturbed. But if you simply stop, become still, the water calms, the particles settle, and suddenly everything becomes clear, transparent, crystalline. This is how the field works. This is how reality works. Silent observation is not passivity. It's not inaction. It is vibrational action at its highest level. Because when you sustain presence, you send a signal, coherent, clean, clear, to the universe. I am, I trust, I am aligned. And that signal cannot be ignored. It is instantly recognized by the field. Reality then begins to collapse around that new frequency. Not because you asked, not because you forced, but because you became. There is no longer a need for struggle, for rushing, for spiritual anxiety, or for excessive techniques. You realize that the real work was never about doing. It was always about sustaining. sustaining presence, sustaining coherence, sustaining a vibration that is no longer staring at the problem, nor desperately craving the solution. In this space, you become a living transmitter of a new frequency to the field. And the field, which is alive, sensitive, conscious, responds. It always responds because it has no choice. It is an extension of your own consciousness. And when you begin living from this place, life reorganizes itself in ways that seem magical to anyone watching from the outside. But you know, it was never magic. It has always been quantum physics applied to consciousness. It has always been vibration. It has always been energy in motion, responding precisely to the quality of your observation. And perhaps now you are beginning to realize you never had to chase things so much. You never had to exhaust yourself, because deep down, life was always asking you in silence, what are you observing, and how are you observing it? What you are ready to see that others still cannot. There comes a point in this journey when something truly powerful begins to reveal itself. And in that moment, you realize you are starting to see what, for so many, still remains invisible. And not because you are better, more special, or more deserving, but because your consciousness is finally ready. Ready to see that the world was never what it appeared to be. Ready to understand that the pieces of the game, which once seemed disconnected, have always formed a hidden, silent, vibrational map that responds directly to your perception. What you're beginning to see is that reality was never solid, never rigid, never what your physical eyes insisted it was. Reality has always been a field of energy, information, and frequency, collapsing possibilities like a hologram, according to who you are being, moment after moment. And maybe now, you're also beginning to understand why so many keep living in circles, repeating the same patterns, stuck in the same problems, the same dramas, the same stories. It's not because they are incapable, it's because they are blinded by their own vibrational programming. Blinded by the belief that the world is fixed, that matter is all there is, that life is limited to what the physical senses can perceive. But you can no longer pretend not to see, because once you see, there's no unseeing. You're beginning to realize that true power was never in control, manipulation, or fighting the external. It has always been in the quality of your presence, in the state of consciousness you choose to sustain here and now. You are beginning to see that the invisible is infinitely more real than the visible, that what cannot be seen, your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions, your vibration, holds a far greater organizing power than anything your eyes could ever perceive. And realizing this is like crossing a portal, because suddenly you understand that what once seemed solid, permanent, unchangeable, is in truth flexible, moldable, sensitive to your very frequency. You begin to realize you no longer need to control what happens, because you now see that the only control that truly matters is over your own vibration, over your inner field, over how you choose to show up for life. And this realization is rare, because while many are still trying to change the world by reacting to what they see, you are beginning to change the world by changing how you see. And this change, though silent, is revolutionary, because it doesn't happen on the external stage of reality. It happens behind the scenes, in the vibration, in the place where everything is actually created, organized, aligned. And here, another truth reveals itself. The world doesn't show you truth. The world shows you your vibration. What you perceive is not what is. It's where you are, energetically, in the field of infinite possibilities. Notice How this changes absolutely everything. Because if what you perceive is merely a reflection of your frequency, then the real question is no longer, why is reality this way? But rather, who am I being as I observe this reality? And maybe, in this exact moment, something even deeper clicks. You realize that many of the answers you spent so long searching for were never out there. They were always in the silence of your own field, in the stillness of your own consciousness, in the space between one thought and the next, where the entire universe quietly reveals itself and whispers, "You are more. You've always been more. You will always be more." You are beginning to see that there is no separation, that what you call external reality is simply the extension of your own internal state. And while most are still observing life through the lens of lack, of rush, of fear, of doubt, you are beginning to align with a much higher space, a space of presence, of silent certainty, of absolute trust in the way life works. And in this space, a new kind of gaze emerges, a gaze that doesn't beg, doesn't plead, doesn't chase. It simply observes, knows, and in that knowing, it becomes. You are ready to see that everything you were searching for was never out there. It was always within. Ready to see that when you change, everything changes. Not because you forced it, but because the reflection has no choice. It is bound to respond to the new vibration you choose to sustain. The universe responds to the awakened observer, not to the anxious observer. There is a subtle but absolutely powerful difference between the anxious observer and the awakened observer. And this difference, though invisible to the eyes, is felt directly in the field. Because the universe doesn't read words. It doesn't read random intentions. It doesn't read disconnected desires. The universe reads vibration, and the vibration of the anxious and the vibration of the awakened are so different that in practice, they create completely opposite realities. The anxious observer is constantly looking at reality through the frequency of lack. Their observation, though often disguised as desire, as hope, or even as faith, carries a vibrational message that informs the field of one thing only: I still don't have, I still am not, I still cannot see. And the universe, always flawless in its coherence, simply responds, perfect. You don't have, you are not, you cannot see. Is it cruel? It's simply precise. It's just vibrational mathematics, operating with absolute perfection. Because the quantum field has no concept of fairness or unfairness, right or wrong, deserving or undeserving. It simply reflects. It always reflects the dominant vibration you are sustaining as you observe. And so, when you observe with anxiety, with rush, with that almost suffocating need for things to change, what you are really transmitting to the field is not your desire, but your resistance. Not your conscious intention, but your unconscious vibration. And the universe, faithful as always, passes no judgment. It simply responds, simply reflects. On the other hand, the awakened observer operates from an entirely different frequency. They do not observe while begging. They do not observe while doubting. They do not observe while pleading. They observe knowing. They observe sustaining. They observe being. And this is exactly where the game changes. Because when you step out of anxiety and into presence, the field notices. The vibration you sustain no longer carries the code of lack, fear, or resistance. It carries the code of vibrational certainty, of coherence, of silent trust. And the universe, sensitive and responsive, immediately begins to reorganize everything around you. From this inner space, there is no more struggle, no more rushing, no more desperation, disguised as manifestation. There is one instead, a clarity so deep, so aligned, that the observer no longer feels the need to chase anything, because they now understand, with absolute certainty, that what is theirs, what matches their vibration, is already on its way. It is already being attracted. It is already being shaped, designed, and organized in the invisible backstage of reality. And here the paradox reveals itself, because the moment you stop needing, you start receiving. The moment you stop chasing, you begin to notice that life starts running towards you, because you finally stop broadcasting the frequency of "I don't have" and began sustaining the frequency of "I already am." The universe does not respond to your declared wishes, it responds to your energetic signature. It does not respond to your words, but to the field you carry as you speak, as you think, as you observe. And that field never lies. And perhaps now, you understand why, for so long, things seemed like they weren't happening. Because no matter how much you visualized, affirmed, asked, if your field was still vibrating in anxiety, in doubt, or in resistance, there was simply no way for the reflection to be anything different. But the moment you align, the moment you pause, breathe, become still, and simply observe with presence, that's the moment the code changes. And when the code changes, the universe has no choice. It must reorganize. It must reflect this new vibration. This is not magic. It's not luck. It's not privilege. It's quantum physics applied to consciousness. It's the mechanics of the field, operating as it always has, only now, consciously. And this awareness is the turning point between those trapped in unconscious reflections and those who finally begin to intentionally co-create a new reality. You no longer need to run. You no longer need to force. You no longer need to convince the universe that you deserve. Because the truth is, the universe has never cared about what you deserve. It only cares about what you vibrate. And when you choose to vibrate presence, clarity, silent trust, everything begins to move. Everything begins to flow. Because in the end, the universe has always been responding. The question was never, is it responding? The question has always been, what exactly is it responding to within me? Now, you know, and knowing changes everything. We've reached the end of this journey, and if you are still here, it's because something very deep within you has recognized this truth. And now, there's no going back. You know, and knowing changes absolutely everything. From this day forward, the way you observe life will never be the same, because you now understand, without question, that reality doesn't happen to you. It responds to you. The reflection has no choice. It only mirrors who you are being in the silence of your field, in the quality of your presence, in the vibration you choose to sustain. So I ask you, now that you know this, what will you choose to observe? What field will you choose to sustain? If this message has touched you, leave a comment below. I choose to observe with awareness. I am the reflection of my vibration. That way, I'll know you made it to the end and that you are ready to see what few have ever seen.